Welcome to the latest edition of the Omni Talk Spotlight Series, where we discuss the technologies, the company, and the people that we believe are shaping the evolution of retail. Today, we are joined by Kevin Tate, the Chief Revenue Officer at Rigado. And Kevin, for those interested, because I definitely am, Kevin is actually our first ever Stanford alum on the show as well. So Kevin, welcome to the show.
Wow, thanks. It's a lot of pressure.
I know, a lot to live up to here. I played the homer role, but I got it. I'm pretty stoked. I'm pretty stoked that we've got a Stanford alum on here. So, but hey, the reason Kevin is on the show for those listening is Kevin specializes in the area, his company specializes in the area of data capture and specifically the concept of edge computing. Now, we at Omni Talk have talked about the three legs of the stool related to new retail or related to omni-channel retailing, and data capture is 100% one of the legs of that stool. And edge computing as a part of that is something we wanted to learn more about. It's something we're a little familiar with, but quite frankly, not something we know enough about, excuse me. And so we asked Kevin to come on the show today to learn more about it. So Kevin, why don't we start there?
Okay.
What's your background? What is all this edge computing? How did you get to this? Like, kind of set the context, lay of the land for us.
Sure. My background, well, actually, I spent a lot of time with online retail early on. So like 96 to 2000, I worked with a couple of companies, iPro and 4Point Partners, that were, it turns out, at the very early beginnings of e-commerce and figuring out how do you use the web as a retailer and as a consumer, and found it fascinating. And so I actually kind of got the bug around where new technologies are intersecting with industries, and some things are changing, and they're changing business, and they're changing how technology is used in the business. And I enjoy the figuring out part. So fast forward through lots of different industries. I got to Rigado about 3.5 years ago, and what I was drawn to was the data that we get out of the physical spaces, whether that's a store or the office we work in, is about to reshape how we use that space. And being a part of figuring out how do you get that data, how do you understand that data, and how do you deliver it to places so you can do something with it, is what we do at Rigado. So it's been fun.
Yeah, explain that more for us too, because I think that point, I think that's the core of what we're talking about here, which is the digitization of the physical store, right? We've always had that capability in e-commerce. We can understand where the mouse moves. We understand what people are adding to their cart, what pages they're looking at. We've never had that understanding in the physical world. And also, we've never had the ability to digitize this space so we can do a lot of things more efficiently, more productively. So with that as the backdrop, double click into that for us. Like,
Yeah, well,
what does all that mean in
I'm glad
context?
you mentioned the examples you did, because if you go back to 96-ish, and when all this was just starting, and we got to work with folks like J. Crew and Best Buy and Martha Stewart, who are building their first e-commerce sites. And a lot of that was trying to figure out what of the brick and mortar experience do we bring into an online experience, and how, right? And so,
Right.
okay, we should have a shopping cart, and what's the metaphor for that? And what's the metaphor for putting something in the basket? And then abandonment. And so figuring out how to bring those brick and mortar experiences and paradigms into online was a big part of it. And what I think is so interesting about what you said around digitization today is a good piece of it is trying to take the online and mobile experiences and how that works, and figure out how do we now reapply that to brick and mortar. And some of it's technology, but a lot of it is what the customers have come to experience and to expect of that experience. So
that's an interesting way to put it. I've never thought about it in that context too. It's kind of like, yeah, now we're flipping the script, and now kind of almost like mind melding the two together to see where it goes. The other thing I think about as you talked about that kind of jumped into my mind is, and I'm thinking about this just in the context of everything going on in the world in terms of like trade shows. And I mean, there's a ton of solution providers out there, and a physical retail operation is very broad and complex. And so there's a lot of different people trying to kind of carve out their niche or their piece in how that all works. That's what you guys help with, though, right? Like that's innately where some of the issues come too, right? Like, it's hard to put all that together. It's easier said than done.
Rigado plays an interesting role in that stack, and briefly where it came from. We got our start in low power wireless and Bluetooth low energy in particular. And so if you go back 7 or 8 years, people, and when Bluetooth Low Energy came out, it was a nice low power, long battery life way to do things like wearables and monitors and a lot of consumer stuff. And then that started to be applied to these commercial spaces. So suddenly you had the ability to use low cost, and a lot of times these sensors might be only $5 or $10, and they might have a battery life of 3 to 5 years. So suddenly, in a very cost-effective way, you can understand things like, is the door open or closed? Is the HVAC running? Is an employee near the desk? How many people walk through the door? Like basic sort of instrumentation stuff,
Right.
not to mention things like, food safety and cold chain. And so it really, it's created the opportunity to have a ton of data that gives you a real-time operations view. But as you said, there's a lot of different players and systems that are trying to put that data to work in what's often a point solution.
Okay.
And so, here's a solution that just does cold chain monitoring for the frozen foods. And here's another solution that just does, ambient comfort monitoring for the showroom. And it sounds crazy, but those systems typically don't use the same infrastructure. They have their own sensors and their own gateways and their own edge processing and their own stovepipe to the cloud. And again, drawing from kind of what happened with the internet, that's not likely the shared and secure infrastructure that stores really need. They need a common way to get the data from a lot of different systems, do something with that data, and get it to the systems that can optimize, say, cold chain or supply chain or the employee experience, but not one point solution for everything. Does that make sense?
I think it does. I think that I've never heard that analogy too. So I actually want to ask you to explain it again too, because I think analogies are really helpful in all these contexts. But you said the stovepipe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, explain what that means. Put that in like practical layman's terms for those listening. Like, say I'm a retailer and I'm listening, and I'm like dealing with that problem of like there's all these disparate systems. What do you mean when you say stovepipe?
We were visiting a restaurant here in Portland recently,
Okay.
and a lot of times we're working with different solution providers or cloud providers, but we also try to go and talk to the end customers and say, so how are you doing this today, right? So in this case, it's a restaurant that has it's like a high-end specialty food shop, and he was showing us the system that he put in place just to do the fridge monitoring, so that he can stay in compliance with food safety regulations.
Sure, right.
But when I say stovepipe, what I mean is that it's a single-use system that is completely closed. So he said I had to buy a thing that had exactly these sensors and only these sensors, and I had to plug this thing into the wall and configure it to go to exactly this website, and this is all it does. So I got this whole, what we would call like sensor to cloud data highway, but all it does is measure these 3 fridges. And we're kind of looking at, this is, if you're using something standard like Bluetooth, and if you're using something flexible like edge computing, then you could be doing all kinds of stuff with this pipeline you already have, right? You could be using it to, again, understand how the space is being used, or apply loss prevention metrics, or track the temperature of anything you want to track, not just these 3 fridges. And that's, I think that's how these systems tend to evolve. They kind of start out, each to their own purpose. And then as standards evolve and as things get more flexible and open, you start to look at it differently and say, how do I have something that looks more like a fabric or a common system, not just sort of data lines, each in their own lane.
Mm-hmm. And how, and again, not an engineer by trade. So for those listening at home that are like me, what is the other option for this? So like, what if I don't think like you're describing? What else am I doing? Like, how else am I implementing this?
Well, so it depends. And to be fair, some things are really specialized.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So a very interesting and hot area right now is cameras. Right. So let's put cameras in stores, and we can do everything from loss prevention tracking to understanding what type of customer and how many in the store, and pathing and all that. And
right.
But if you're to create a system that can capture that kind of rich camera data and then process it at the edge, send it to the cloud, and then figure out what you need to know about it. That's a very specialized system and pretty specific to the equipment and what you're capturing. So some things like that sort of make more sense as a what we would call like a point solution. But
Right.
other things where I need to, and kind of back to the website analogy,
Okay.
generally I need to understand, where did people go? What's going on with the space? Are there stockouts and inventory I need to know about? Are there condition monitoring issues like temperature or food safety? Where are the employees in the store, and do I need to reallocate them based on how busy we are and where? Those types of things are more sort of they're more generalized in the type of information you need. Its location, its presence, its temperature, its condition, its activity.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't necessarily have to look at those for a single use case. And you can look at those as data points that could feed lots of different use cases and systems. And another part of that evolution, I think, that's important is the cloud providers. So,
Okay.
and here I'm thinking about like Azure and their whole IoT stack, and then AWS and IBM.
Mm-hmm.
They've really evolved to be able to say, hey, if you send me the data and get that into, say, an Azure cloud environment, now you can apply lots of different applications to that data. So they're also kind of pushing toward this more interoperable shared infrastructure. And that's really what we're trying to feed. We're trying to help stores get ready for a shared infrastructure and cloud driven operations versus sort of point applications.
And so if I play that back to you and kind of put it in kind of my own words too, like I essentially if you believe in the digitization of the physical space and you believe in the ability to capture all the data around all the different things that you're saying are happening in a store, it's one thing to say to go to cloud, but really the other point you have to figure out is how are you capturing all that, but actually getting it out of the store and into the cloud is a really important thing to think about, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
And you know, if you're not doing this right, from my right, then generally speaking, you're probably doing this through some type of large server hardware infrastructure too. Is that correct?
Yeah. So that pendulum always swings, right? Sort of on-prem versus in the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
There are certainly companies that have invested a lot in on-premise computing. You know, they got a whole closet or more of rack servers that are doing edge processing and sort of building their own stack in the store. Which can be very powerful. It can be very expensive, and typically isn't as feasible for like a smaller format store, like a quick serve or a convenience chain.
Right. Huge opportunity costs.
Yeah, right. And installation and maintenance and so on. I think part of, back to analogies, I made a shift recently. We have like a home security system, and I had one of the old home security systems that we got when we got the house, right?
Okay.
And somebody installed it, and it's got all this equipment. I've literally got this closet where they wired it into the phone line and paid an exorbitant fee per month. Like, time out, right? There has to be a better way. So I looked at the different basically kits you can get and picked one of those. And in an afternoon, kit showed up at my house with the 5 door sensors I needed and the 4 window sensors I needed. I peel and stick and put them on. I plugged in their gateway, and it was already all set up to talk to all that stuff. Got online and typed in my account, and it's done. And I've got all the same stuff I had before, but with a better interface, right? I've got the police get called if something happens. So it just, and that in a lot of way, that peel and stick, plug and play experience of getting the data you need out of your store rather than house, that's a lot of what's available now to retailers. That just wasn't even 5 years ago, even 3 years ago. So we put together kits like that for a convenience store, and then they can say, great, now I can get my temperature and my activity and my employee data up to wherever they want to take it.
Well, and that's an important point too, because not only is it, how do you get the information out and into the cloud, but also you got to be, especially in retail today, where human labor is, one of the most expensive line items on the income statement, or is the most expensive line item on the income statement too. You have to be really conscious of the just operational load that you're putting on people too. So the home security analogy helps put that into perspective too, of like what are you going to ask people to do day in and day out, whether it's in the store or at the headquarters, to be able to manage all this stuff. You got to be careful about the foundation you're putting in place.
It's got to be easy to install. It's got to be very, very low touch to maintain. And to your point around employee productivity, that's one of the big areas that we're hearing about from retailers. And it's kind of two sides, right? So one is just how do I automate stuff? Basically, anywhere that an employee is walking around with a physical clipboard and say reading temperature measurements at all the places across the fresh food area and writing it down. That
highly subjective too.
Yeah, digital clipboard, if you will, is a kind of a no-brainer. And that's not to say it's easy, but if you have the right kind of infrastructure and the right equipment, you can save a ton of money. And then the other area is, once you understand what's going on in the store and with the employees, how do we be more responsive in making sure that employees are where they need to be and they're able to address customer needs, right? So, we heard recently from a retailer was saying the way people know kind of where in the store to staff is still largely they go somewhere for half an hour and they run back to the break room and then they check the whiteboard. Say, okay, well, now I'm on produce, or now I need to go sample, and then they run all the way back to that part of the store. And that's a long way from, say, being able to look at a wearable and have it send you a note and say, hey, please go to the third floor. We could use some help up there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or getting on the intercom and, hey, Kevin, aisle 5, so.
While you're helping someone. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. So there's a lot of opportunities to create a more responsive environment with this real-time information.
Well, let's shift gears there. Let's talk about that a little bit too. And I want to, as much as you can share in terms of maybe the companies you're working with or anecdotes you can share too of where you're seeing success in terms of the implementations. You've even started to do that a little bit already. But if I'm a retailer and I want to work with you guys, if I want to work with Rigado, what does that type of implementation look like? What are we talking about here? Maybe talk through that. And then if you can give us actually like a cool use case or example of where this is in practice, maybe that people can even understand, that'd be great, or see on their own.
So at the end of the day, what you're likely to get from Rigado is a set of sensors and devices that go into the store, probably from our partners, and then Rigado gateways, which are basically mini computers that handle the connectivity and the data from those devices, process it, and send it to one or more places in the cloud. So that's always the sort of infrastructure that's going in. And what that infrastructure does and what the goal of the business is, varies a lot. So to give some examples, we do a lot of work in quick serve restaurants through our partner Radius Networks.
Okay.
And so they have a set of solutions that include things like table delivery service. So if you've been in a quick serve restaurant where you order from a kiosk and then go sit down with the table tent and they sort of magically bring the food right to your table. The magic is our gateways are in the ceiling triangulating where you sat. So based on either the table tent or your phone, they can see on a tablet where you sat and bring you your food.
I always wondered if that's how they do that. I was literally on stage conjecturing about that a couple months ago, and because I think I know there's a big quick serve restaurant. Yeah, no, I exactly that's how they do it. That's awesome.
And to use that as an example of sort of turning a point solution into infrastructure, our same gateways can also communicate with someone who's using the mobile app for that quick serve restaurant. So if they wanted to order more from their table without having to get back up in line, they could do that. If they ordered online and then they say drove into the parking lot, then our gateway can hear, hey, someone who's running the app and has got order number 47, their car just came into the parking lot because our gateway sees it. So get ready to run the food out while it's hot. And so start to think about, not only is the store instrumented for what's going on in that store experience, but now integrating with buy online, pick up in store, and how could we use those things to speed up the delivery service providers and what their store interaction is, and do we want to try to smartly route them to the pickup window versus the front counter versus we'll take it out to you on the curbside. And so all those things, so our gateway can do all those things in terms of communicating with different sensors and store systems and phones to to optimize.
Well, I'm about to geek out. So like, and I think this is a big trend in retail too, because like being able to be flexible in the consumer experiences you're offering is
Mm-hmm.
incredibly important. You're seeing the
Yeah.
retailers that do that well are having success. So like, if I geek out on this for a second, I want to, because I think what you're saying is I can actually do this, or this world is not that far off. So if I go into a coffee shop, like, sure, I can order ahead. I can take out my mobile phone. I can order online, and I can have it waiting for me when I pick it up.
Yep.
But what you're saying is essentially like, if I'm at that coffee, I've done that already, but I'm still in that coffee shop and I'm writing a piece. Let's say I'm writing a piece for Forbes. I could actually take out my phone in theory, instead of having to go pick up it to the counter. That same coffee shop would just know where I am and bring my phone, bring that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hit the refill button and here you go. Yeah. Right. Which,
oh God, I would love that,
is
because
really,
you don't want to get out of the flow. Like,
yeah.
I'm in my flow writing, but God, I need that caffeine fix.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and I think with coffee shops in general, and not to rat hole on this too much, but it is such an interesting space because people do work there and they have meetings there. And so how do you start to bring a level of reservation or availability, the way we think about hot desking almost in office, like how can we start to make those spaces more available and manageable to the people who rely on them, right? Because coffee shop hates it if we get slammed with a tour bus, and then people who thought they could come meet there with their 3 colleagues, they can't, but they would be able to in 15 minutes. But nobody knows that, and so how do you start to think about utilization and availability in a way that you can manage in these spaces is also.
Or like at a restaurant too, or something like that.
Yeah,
I would imagine. Yeah. It's funny.
That's quick serve. I'll give you another totally different example.
Yeah, do it, please. That'd be awesome. Okay.
Another, and I can talk about this one because we're going to do a webinar on this next Wednesday.
Okay, cool.
With our partner Weissberger, and they're a part of AB InBev. And so they have a system that uses our gateways, is coming out soon, to do real-time tap monitoring. So they know exactly how much beer was poured, when it was poured, was it an overpour, was it an underpour, and looking across all those taps gives them a real-time view into not just efficiency of operations, but who's buying what when and what brands, and understanding at the point of consumption, understanding how a bar owner can optimize those operations. Right. They shared an interesting tidbit with me that said, when you look at something like a football match in Europe, and you've got all these people coming to the stadium, and said I may get this a little wrong, but they said that the 20 minutes before the game starts is effectively when a fan makes their beverage choice for the day, right? If they start drinking Heineken, they're going to drink Heineken all day. If they start drinking Stella, they're going to drink Stella all day. So knowing that, what can you do with that as a bar? And you might have 20 locations inside the same stadium. And now if they can all talk to each other in real time, then you can be ready for that. Right. And you can start, optimizing where the kegs are. I mean, it's kind of endless. But this idea of real-time operational information really changes how, in that case, bar and restaurant owners can run the business.
Yeah, and all things being equal, you can start to make better consumer experiences and decisions for your customers over time. Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, that's 100%. It makes a ton of sense in terms of why this is an important leg of the stool, is being able to capture that data to do that. Yeah, and that's where data is so important in terms of how things are going to play in the future, because it can make things better. Dude, that was awesome. That example at the end was really cool too. Especially, I mean,
they're a really smart group. They're really fun to work with.
When is that webinar?
It's next Wednesday. It's March the 11th at 9 a.m. Pacific time. I put a thing up on Rigado's LinkedIn page about it. So would love to see folks there.
Awesome. So that's a cool way for people to check things out too. Yeah, that'd be a really cool case study to understand, because I imagine there's a lot of analogies there across so many aspects of an overall operation.
Oh yeah, they tie it into POS, and it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, then that stuff gets really cool. Yeah, the POS correlations get super cool. All right, before I geek out and walk out. Oh no, go ahead. Before I geek out and walk out too much.
There that I think is a really important theme. You mentioned that, how do you cater to what customers have come to expect and deliver better experiences, and this is important to me, because I feel like, especially in-store technology and Bluetooth technology a few years ago got associated with like marketing beacons, whereas like, hey, you standing by the jeans, you're standing by the jeans. Want some jeans? Like, and that's not, you know, if there's one thing I've developed in my 20 years of retail tech, it's like an aversion to. So anyway, so that, and that's not what's driving the trend that we're seeing today. Really, it's about no understanding what customers are asking for and expecting, and how do we deliver it to them in the fastest and most efficient way possible. If you've ordered something and you need to pick it up, I want to understand from you. Do you want to get in the drive up window? Do you want me to pull it out curbside? Do you want to run in and grab it? And being able to know that and react to that is so much more the theme these days. And I just think that's a lot more real than, you know, how can I figure out how to sell you 10% more?
Yeah, and the other important layer in that too is, I think, and you can do it in a way that works for both parties, right?
Mhm.
Like that's the thing. When you can understand the core, the root of what you're trying to get at and how you describe that,
Mhm.
there's a value creation for both sides when it's done the right way.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think, important
And
here.
when it, you know, on the flip side, when it's not done the right way, I think, you know, patience isn't what it used to be. We've come to expect, I mean, you know, back to the analogy, when I go to, you know, say bestbuy.com, they know who I am, they know what I bought, they know what I bought last time. I mean, it's the website knows me. When I walk into the store, they don't know me yet.
Yeah.
And so how do we at least make the store as smart as the website?
Yeah, or even the store themselves, you know, that's the other part of this, right? Like in terms of the previous conversation, the store themselves, you don't even know themselves that well, but they do on the website. So
Know thyself
yeah,
store.
know thyself, right,
Yep.
man? Yeah, exactly. All right, man, I got to get you out of here on this. I got to get you out of here on the how millennial are you? And again, for
Oh,
those listening for the
no.
first time, and for you, Kevin, it's not a game to judge how old you are, but it's really a game that we do with all of our guests to just see where is everyone's head from a curiosity of mind standpoint and some of the things that are changing and happening in and around the conversations that we've been having. So,
Okay.
are you ready?
I think so. I think so.
And for those listening, Kevin also has an improv background, so I'm curious to see where this goes. But
Funny. Be funny.
yeah, so now pressure's on. You got to be funny. So, question number one: when the option is available, I'll try to put my ominous voice here. Are you using a form of mobile payment like Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, or are you still pulling out your credit card when you visit a retail establishment?
I am an Apple payer.
All right.
It's probably been a little over a year. I had it and then I switched phones, you know, and didn't reset it back up. And then about a year and a half ago, the thing I have not done is I have not gone to the watch yet. I still feel a little self-conscious, like, let me just tap my watch. You know, so and it would be easier, but I just feel like that might be a little too much. Yeah.
What I'm curious psychologically, what made you so you kind of had a period where you were off it. What made you go back to it? And now what's kept you on it as your preferred
That's a
form of
good
payment?
question. I would credit my so there's a Starbucks, well, there's like three Starbucks right next to our office in downtown Portland. And I'll go in a couple of times a week and grab a breakfast and a thing there. And I think it was the convenience of not having to just pull out the wallet and deal with it and just beep. And
Okay.
so I think I would credit the Starbucks convenience factor for what tipped it back. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I
Yeah.
can't wait to ask you this next question because in answering that question by default, I think that means you do not have the Starbucks app. So I'm going to ask you this next question. How many times in the last week have you ordered food or beverages via a mobile app?
Oh, you know, that's a timely question because I can say once because I did it for the first time. So there's a pizza place around the corner.
What?
And well, I mean, not the first time ever, but the first time like recent.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I was around the corner running an errand and I downloaded the app, ordered the pizza so I could pick it up on my way back. But I was just very consciously aware of like, I'm literally, you know, going to the app store and downloading the Mod Pizza app. It was a good experience.
Shout out
Um,
to them. Uh,
yeah.
why? So that sounds like it's not a common thing for you.
You
Why
know,
is that?
I think it's honestly, I think it's just I'm just a really bad planner. Like I'm not, the flip side is you're just sort of constantly, surprised at where you end up. But like I'm not, I don't tend to optimize my time that way. I tend to just, get out of the building for lunch and then see where I end up and get something rather than sort of, planning ahead. So I'll chalk it up to my bad planning.
You're a Rolling Stone.
That's it.
That's what we've got? All right. Awesome. All right. Last question. I have no idea where you're going to go with this one. All right. If you could only use one social app, took away everything else, you can only use one social app, what would it be and why?
So the answer for me would be LinkedIn. And
Okay.
I realize that sounds sort of boring, but I for several years we had a company that did social application development and social media marketing, kind of back when that was like a Web 2.0 thing, and it became a social thing. And so I got a little burnt on sort of the big social networks and just the business side of that, and a lot of the data and privacy concerns and things. So I use LinkedIn for business and connections and that, but I have a really pretty small footprint for smaller than most of my friends for Facebook and Twitter and kind of the big ones.
Those things, yeah.
Yeah.
We find that as a common theme too, especially for entrepreneurs and people that have been in entrepreneurship for a long time. LinkedIn is usually one of the things they mention. It's funny though, you put an interesting angle on it that I haven't thought about before too, is like some of the aspects of commerce and even some of the aspects of like what gets done at a trade show and how LinkedIn could facilitate that to an even greater degree than it probably does. There's a lot of untapped potential in some of the social angles for that, especially on the B2B side of being social.
Yeah.
And what that means. I'd never thought about that until you just said.
Well, it's funny, back to the like, when's the first or when's the last time you used an app like that? It was only maybe 3 months ago. I was at a conference and somebody pulled up the LinkedIn app and like did the QR code thing to trade, to get connected, which is so like, 1999.
So Palm Pilot. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And I was like, whoa, of course that's a thing. But just, I don't know. I mean, back to sort of the theme, there's this sort of magical bit where a digital experience takes this physical form. And you're like, wow, those dots just connected all the way around the world and back to our two phones. And I think there's a lot of opportunities for those in retail as the store gets smarter too. Just like, wow, the store knew what I wanted. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I love doing this too, because like you just put that whole thing in a different, like LinkedIn is potentially more powerful than I've ever actually envisioned it before, at least for me personally. So that's fascinating. That's why I love doing this, because not only did I learn about, everything that Rigado does and, exactly what you guys specialize in, but I got to learn, a little bit more about you and also just kind of some things in regards to how the world ticks. So, well, hey man, that was awesome. If people found the topic that we were talking about interesting today and they want to learn more about Rigado and edge computing, what you guys do, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Go to the Rigado website, rigado.com, or find Rigado or find me on LinkedIn, Kevin Tate. Yeah, I would love to connect.
Kevin Tate. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. Again, for everyone listening, Kevin Tate, the Chief Revenue Officer at Rigado. As always, a couple of things in closing. First, don't usually do this, but I have to say it in this case, go Cardinal. And as always, be careful out there.